So, as someone that does a lot of projects, I think my biggest character flaw is the fact that I will buy something for a project or want to start a project and then just completely forget about it for like up to a year. So, I think it was like 8 months since I bought this, and I literally just got it out of the box. This is a vacuum pump that I bought at Harbor Freight. And just this past week, I finally decided to buy the gauge and all the fittings that I needed. Because there's a couple projects where it would come in handy to be able to remove the air out of everything. In fact, I've got a silicone mold kit that I wanted to do for another project. That's like one of the main things I need to do to make a perfect mold is like remove the air out of the silicone. But as of right now, I don't have the whole kit to do it. I had bought this at a thrift store just for like $5. It's like a perfect pot for doing any sort of vacuum pumping. I think it's got enough strength to it. So all I need is the seal and the acrylic top. Now, I have pulled a couple things. I have a 1/4-inch sheet of acrylic. Now, it's a long sheet, but I need at least like a 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to try to do, and see if it fails or not, is I'm going to put like an epoxy between 2 sheets, try to get all the air out of them as I can, and then see if it holds. For the seal, I've just got like some silicone caulking. I'm going to see if I can get it to work. I just have to like make a form and make it sure it's as flat as possible, and that's what I'm doing. So we'll get started by, I guess, making the form for the silicone. So what I've got here, this is another just piece that I just happened across. It's just spare acrylic, I think. Either that or it's polycarbonate. But I'm just going to cut this in half and use, like, make an inner ring and an outer ring. So my next step was to get something relatively smooth to put this all on. And I have this piece of material that I have from when I did one of my floors. It's not particularly smooth, but I think it'll fit the bill for what I need. So I've already marked out the circle for the pot, so I'm just going to bend these into shape. One inside, one outside, just big enough. And then, not exactly sure how I'm going to set it. Maybe hot glue? We'll find out. So now that I got this part done, obviously I can't fit it on because of the handles, but it's definitely going to be overkill for what I need. I've just got to figure out what to do to keep the bubbles out and make sure I can pull this thing up when it's ready to go. I think what I'm going to do, I have this air pump that vibrates a little bit. I'm going to take that chunk of wood, I'm going to set it on, I'm going to put them all together, and hopefully when I get that all in place, it'll help get the air bubbles out without me having to do anything physically. So it took me a minute to find my caulk. It's just some all-purpose silicone, GE. So, I'm going to turn this thing on. Get it vibrating. I don't know if this is going to help or hurt it, but I've got this mold release from when I bought the silicone stuff. Silicone molds. So I'm just going to apply this until I probably run out. Alright, so I'm going to stop myself there. This is one of those projects where I started doing something without thinking it through. The silicone is way too thick for this purpose, just as it comes. So I did a little bit of research, and turns out if you take mineral spirits with pure silicone, 100% silicone caulking, or whatever that stuff actually is made out of, it will thin it out. So, this is one of those odd situations where the silicone as it was did work, and it's still going to take forever for this stuff to harden. But I'm going to get a better result with it thinned out, because my biggest mistake was not stopping as soon as I realized how thick it was. Because with this stuff, like right now, because I kind of went crazy and put the pot on it to kind of make it work at least a little bit, there's way too much bubbles, way too many bubbles, and like it works. It's together, and I pressure tested. I have to push it down to get it started, but it does physically work. I had to put a bunch of lubricant on the top to actually get it to hold the suction. But, so, what I'm going to do, and I went and did a secondary troubleshooting position. Essentially what happens is I put this on way too thick as well, because I used the entire tube without actually measuring out how much I wanted to put on there. I only need 130 milliliters to give me a 1/4 inch gap around the whole center. And so I'm going to use a 1/4 inch, I'm going to use 130 milliliters of the actual silicone. Get it all loose with the mineral spirits, let it all sit, and hopefully this time I'll actually get it to work. Now, added bonuses, now that I have a working vacuum chamber, which once I make the better gasket, I'm going to just like completely cut out all this stuff that I have glued on there, which is going to be a pain. I can actually remove the bubbles now from the material before I actually put it in the form, which should help it have a uniform finish and no weird air bubbles at the top or bottom when it's trying to seal. So I guess I will do that. Okay, so my tripod was not helping me any. So I am going to try this out. vacuum pump. Oh, let me actually turn it around so you can actually see the gauge. Vacuum pump on. Push it down so it starts getting pressure. Now the biggest thing that I realized with this so far is at the very bottom, because you know it's a flat pan, it pops up for a moment. But you can start seeing all the bubbles that are being pulled from the system. So I'm gonna purge that a couple times and then we'll go back to pouring. Biggest surprise, these quick fittings, they actually hold pressure really well, even in a vacuum. So I have the pump off right now, and it's still under negative 25, over, whatever you want to say. It's still got a vacuum. So I added a little bit more mineral spirits because it still seemed a little too thick and didn't want to actually purge the bubbles. So far so good. I might still have to add a little bit more. I'm not 100% sure yet. But I guess the next part you'll see is the pour. So that was super obnoxious. I got as many bubbles out as I could, but I probably spent like half an hour trying to get them all out. Now, I ended up putting probably about 100... Oh, light shut off again. I put about 100 milliliters of... 100 milliliters of the mineral spirits. And it was still pretty darn thick, to be honest. Oh, I'm going to be messing up now already. Alright, I got one layer all the way around. Ooh, this stuff sucks. Oh gosh, I can still see some bubbles now. I've got a, like an air pump underneath of here. And it's just going to continuously give this like micro vibrations to try to get this to settle properly. I mean, it's definitely like 100 times better than what it was the last time. But I can still see some slight ridges, which once I actually put it on it, shouldn't affect it. So we're going to let it set and see what happens. So now that we wait for that nightmare scenario to settle, it's time to actually cut out the 1/4 inch acrylic twice to get a 1/2 inch, and then try to sandwich it together the best I can to actually get it to be a completely solid 1/2 inch. I'm sure nothing will go wrong on this one. So this lid fits that pot. I can't touch that pot because obviously it's got silicone everywhere and it's going to take days to set. So I'm just going to circle it out, make it slightly bigger. I can sand it down if I have to. And yeah, that's what I'm doing. think I've got everything set up now. I've got both surfaces cleaned up. I did go ahead and take a razor blade, go along the edge, try to clean up as much as I could on that. Took some sandpaper, just trying to sand it down, just to make sure it's as flat as the surface as possible. Now, I've used this stuff multiple times, putting glass pieces together. Made a couple things for my mom last year. This is Quick Weld by JB Weld, or Clear Weld by JB Weld. I used to get these little tiny ones. They're only 0.85 fluid ounces, 25 milliliters. These are 118 milliliters for only 2.5 times the price. So you definitely get tons more for the price. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix this up real quick, use the rest of what I have in here and then some of this. And we'll try to press it together. I will have some bubbles. It is inevitable. Unless I had something like, I don't know, a vacuum chamber. So I am just going to go ahead and get it as flat as possible, get it combined as much as possible. We'll see if it works out or not. But flatten it, put it in my vise, flatten it down, try to get the two pieces as close together as possible. Hopefully I don't do too much and they crack. But I digress. We'll get started. Now the fun part with this is just trying to do it in a way that it's not gonna like slide. I should have enough like space that even if it slides, it should be fine. I'm going to put on my safety goggles, though, just in case. I've done it with regular glass. I have not done it with acrylic. Alright. I feel like that's all I should do. I feel like if I do it anymore, it's probably going to crack the acrylic. I am getting seepage, it looks like, on all sections. So that's good. Yeah, I don't think it's going to do anymore. So I think we're going to stop there and let it set for several hours. And check back on it then. Hopefully it looks good. Alright, so it's finally been a couple hours. Let's see how bad it turned out. Oops. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. That might actually work perfect. Holy cow. I don't see anything. It's perfectly clear. Alright, I'm going to set this outside to cure in the sun for a while longer. So now we're into March, and I've been working on this project casually for about a month. I've gotten all the old silicone off of this, and the new gasket came out pretty decent. I let it cure for about 2 weeks, and it's still very, very flexible, though I did incur one problem. When I was doing a vacuum test, and this was sitting on top, it held vacuum very well for a while, until it decided to split the gasket. So now I'm going to have to go and put a new bead of silicone around here. Hopefully I don't have to do anything major. I think I'll just be able to put it in the seams and let that cure. Hopefully that'll be fine. But in order to make sure that doesn't happen again, I'm going to have to make a ring of acrylic. Probably put down a bead of silicone on the bottom here, let that cure, and then flip it around and do a bead of silicone again. And hopefully this time I'll have something that holds. Alright, so this is a very unexpected reaction. I don't know if I can get this to zoom in properly, but I took this outside so the silicone could cure. Oops, focus. And the glass has a bunch of microfractions and fractures on the edges now. So hopefully that won't severely limit my ability to use this, but we'll see if it actually works or not. Now that everything's had enough time to cure, the project is officially complete. The only weird thing is that weird cracking that the top or the bottom piece of acrylic had. I'm not exactly sure what caused it, because not only did I do everything the exact same way as I did before, the two that I pressed together sat in the sun as well, so it wasn't that the sun did it. So however I sanded it, I guess I did something slightly different, and it caused it to crack. So eventually, one day, I'll probably have to replace that piece, or I can just replace the pot with something that has a flatter lip. Fixing the seal with just adding a bead of silicone seemed to work fine. Everything's okay with that now, and I guess all there is left to do is just show you how it works and do some neat stuff with it. So enjoy that.